the Football Mental Health Alliance podcast, a mental health podcast for grassroots football. Our aim, to boldly delve into the intersection of mental health and football. We feature notable experts and ex-pros who are not afraid to share their wisdom and personal journeys with mental health.
So on today's podcast, we have Steve Whittle from Tough to Talk. Steve, I'm just going to ask you to tell everyone who you are, what you do it for, and why it came about.
Yes, thank you, Danny, for having me on. This is, I'm really pleased to be here and to be talking about Tough to Talk and what we do. Tough to Talk is a charity dedicated to reducing men's suicide, male suicide, and destroying the stigma about men talking about their crisis. We avoid trying to say that we're a mental health charity because mental health only plays a small part in what we do, and we'll be able to talk about that a little bit if we get down that route. But the reason why this charity was created was ultimately I've had suicide behaviors most of my life. 3 different times I've tried to die by suicide, and the first time that I tried, it got put down as an accident, and it wasn't seen as me trying to die. I was in the military, and they put it down as a training accident, and they were like, "Oh, that was a near miss," and I was relieved by that, because what a lot of men go through when they don't succeed when dying by suicide, a lot of people don't know this, one of the first things they feel is guilt and shame, because something they had control of they didn't go through with, and they're just really pleased. I know I felt really pleased that nobody else knew. The second time I was interrupted, and the third time was the first time that I reached out for help. And so it was really scary that I got to such a point where I thought this was the solution, the answer to all of my problems, and I failed. And moment of clarity, and I reached out. And the thing that stuck in my head was that when the crisis team came and they tried to help me, they just kept saying, "Don't worry, you're not alone. Lots of men feel this way." And I thought, well, that's rubbish. That's utter garbage, because I know thousands of men. I've known thousands of men throughout my life. None of them feel like I do. And none of them are going through what I'm going through. None of them are experiencing what I'm experiencing. That's nonsense. So I researched it, because I'm a bit of a geek like that. And I went down a rabbit hole and researched it. And the stats, unbelievable, what I found about men's crisis and the male suicide rates. And it turns out I'm not alone. And one of the first things I discovered was that suicide is one of the largest, if not the largest, preventable cause of death on the planet. What I discovered was that 700,000 people, over 700,000 people in the world, die by suicide each year. And that's the World Health Organization's statistics. I know a lot of people always go, "Oh, where'd you get that data from?" Well, all the information that I've got comes from either ONS data or World Health Organization, really good authorities.
Yeah.
And then what I found out was that, out of 4 suicides, 3 of them are always men. So that's 3 out of 4 suicides, always men. And interestingly, women are attempting suicide 3 times more often than men, but men are dying 3 times more often. And women are amazing. Most women have this great level of empathy, and they're very much aware of the people who are around them. And so if they go quiet or they're having trouble, they get checked in on, which is fantastic. Men don't seem to do that. And men also choose the most violent ways of dying, and there's no coming back. And when I speak to a lot of men who have not completed suicide, and I speak to them and I say, why is it you chose such a violent method? They say, well, I don't want to come back from this. They often already feel like a burden in their life. They're already a burden to those around them. They don't want to then fail and then be left with lasting injuries or something like that. That means they become a burden for even longer. So we choose very violent ways of doing it, and we're not checked in on, or we're not interrupted as often as women. So we need to learn from that. Maybe we need to check in on each other much more, which is part of some of the solution. So when I learned all of this, I then had to look around to see what help was out there for us. And there's two sides to this help coin, if you like. One side is what happens when I say I have a problem and you admit it, I'm having thoughts of suicide. And there's the help. It's the only time that men are really prioritized over women in healthcare, is that if a man says, I'm thinking about dying by suicide, they get prioritized for obvious reasons, because they're much more likely to go ahead with it. But also, whether you're a man or a woman, the services that are out there to support people in crisis is really poor. I needed trauma counseling. It took me 2 years to get my first appointment. So once I'm out of crisis, they need to move on to the next person who's in crisis, and then the next person. But there's a backlog then of people who are just teetering on crisis, who are not getting the help they need. And I thought, well, I can't help people there. I can raise awareness about the issues, and there's lots of people out there lobbying for help, and I'll just be another voice. They need that. So I thought, well, what's happening on the other side of the coin with people men who are getting into crisis? How are they doing that? So that's where I thought I would focus our energies as a charity. With the, as far as I know, we're the only men's charity that's dealing with male suicide and the stigma surrounding men talking about their crisis, and just that. And we are really focusing on that 80% of men. It's in the mental health, fraternity, if you like. It's accepted that about 80% of male suicides are what we call functioning adults. So functioning adults are people who are going to work, they've got friends, they've got family, they're socializing, they might even be life and soul of the party, and then they die by suicide, and everyone goes, I never saw that coming. It's bonkers. And 80% of men who die by suicide are considered functioning adults. So how do we get to those people? Why are those people not speaking up? And that's how Tough to Talk came about, because actually it's those people that we need to approach. Those people who are going to Andy's Man Club, Man Shed, all of those groups, those people who are speaking in those groups, their chances of dying by suicide dramatically go down.
Right.
And so we don't want to talk to them because they're already asking for help. We want to get to those others. And that's how we came about.
I know when before we started this, you mentioned about the two groups of men that are more likely to die by suicide. Can you just highlight those for us? The two groups, the two age groups you mentioned.
The age groups. Yeah. So suicide is obviously the biggest killer for men under 45. But the two age groups that are most significantly affected at the moment are 18 to 24-year-olds and 45 to 50-year-olds. And I don't think it's as any surprise. So when we're talking to those groups, because we do a lot of talks with young men, and obviously we speak to a lot of survivors, and when it's the young men, they are still trying to figure their lives out. So we know that young men mature later than women. That's just a biological fact. And so as they're in that age of trying to, find their place in the world, they're trying to discover, who they are. They're looking at their role models. They're doing all of that. And they're doom scrolling through social media. And they may be getting told constantly that masculinity is toxic by default, and men should be this and men should be that. It's such mixed signals. They're trying to find their place. I don't think it's any surprise that those young men are confused and are really struggling with the main factors, which I'll talk about in a second, that men worry about. Then you look at the older generation. If you think you're 45 years old, maybe you're nearly 50, and it's at this point in your life where you're probably thinking, I've got less life ahead of me than I have got behind me. And it's at this point when significant things happen in your life become a massive factor. You might get made redundant. Well, who's going to hire a 45 to 50-year-old? Well, lots of people, but in your head you're thinking, well, who's going to hire me, right? You might break up with your partner at this point. well, how eligible are you now as a 45 to 50-year-old? Well, you could be quite eligible, but inside you may not be thinking that. You may be splitting up with your partner and not seeing your kids. You might have financial problems. You might have past history and trauma that you're also unpacking, and then your current life events start to affect that. So I don't think it's any surprise that is another hot age group where men are dying by suicide. Now, we another thing that I think that really factors all men in their age groups is the language we use when we're talking to men to say, reach out, get help.
Yeah.
Because we hear it all the time. I think most people would agree that more men are talking about mental health and their struggles. What I'm finding is that's a real perception, but not really a reality. What we have is a lot of men talking about it, but it's the same men. And it's the same men who have higher levels of empathy, and they are saying, yes, we should absolutely do that. But the men who really need the help are not talking about it because of the stigma, because of that stoic nature, how we're brought up in the world to be strong, be brave, man up. I know that we've adopted man up as one of our calling cards, our mission cards. But men are not speaking up. The men who are really in trouble. And when we talk to them and say, listen, your mental health is really important, you need to speak up, they're like, my mental health is fine. It's all the other things in my life which are not.
Yeah.
So we know that most of the troubles that people have, not just men, but people have, are often gendered issues. They're identity factors, biological factors, current life events, past history and trauma, right? And only one of those is really affected by your mental health, which is the psychological conditions. So using me as an example, I have complex PTSD from things that happened to me in my past, which I never dealt with, typical man. And also I have depression. So often I don't think things are just worth it. Why would I do that? I can't be bothered to do that. Nothing makes me happy. Why would I even do that? As soon as somebody else comes in the room, I'm laughing and joking and hiding it all. And it's a constant battle. So for me, it was a psychological factor. But a lot of men especially have not got that. What they've got is their current life events is falling apart. They might have a past history of gambling or substance abuse or care system which has given them past trauma that they're dealing with. And they may have a biological factor. They may have, be having to see the doctors for something because there's something wrong with them and they're not trying to figure that out. Who are they talking about to these things?
Yeah.
No one, and no one's talking to them about them. So because we're not using that language, we're just saying mental health.
Yeah.
Now, all of these things can lead to a deterioration in their mental health that could lead to anxiety, stress, could lead to depression, but could lead to thoughts of suicide. But they're not the main causes. It's not this stress and the anxiety which is the cause of the problems. They are a symptom of those problems. So we need to change our language, our tone of voice, and how we're speaking to men. And that's why we were brought up and why we were created, if you like.
So how can we do that then? Because I think I think a mental health conversation carries a lot of responsibility. And I think some people are scared to maybe initiate a mental health conversation for fear of, what if I say the wrong thing? What if I do the wrong thing? What if I don't handle it correctly? What if I make things worse? And I think then when you move from a mental health conversation to a conversation around suicide, I think, talking for myself, the stakes are even higher, if you like. And there's more worry about, I don't want to get it wrong. I don't want to say something that could trigger something else. So how do we go about these conversations, and how do we give ourselves confidence to approach these conversations, to initiate these conversations? And how can the other person, have the again, confidence may be the wrong word, but the I can't think of the right word really, but how can they then be open to talking about, how can we as blokes be open to talking about mental health first, but secondly, the level up of suicide?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely, and it's massive. This whole conversation is massive. You're right about confidence. You have to have confidence, but also you have to have knowledge. You have to know what you can say. Now, when it comes to talking about mental health, when we're talking about people's lives of being on the line, we should worry less about how we say something as long as we do say something.
Right.
So, lots to unpack there. So, in terms of how we say things, worry less about that and worry more about saying something. We live in a world that is all about being triggered, about offending someone, right? I would rather say something wrong and offend somebody and save their life than say nothing at all.
Yeah.
So, for example, a good example of this is that we have to try and avoid saying committed suicide.
Yes.
Because committed suicide would suggest that that it's a crime and they've done something wrong, and that can be triggering for people around them. But I would rather you say to somebody, "Are you thinking about committing suicide?" than saying nothing at all, because the chances are they've never been asked. Okay, but we don't know in this world. We don't know. Are we allowed to say the word suicide? Can we say suicide? Or can we do that? Yeah. Can you say that? Can we ask somebody if they're feeling a certain way? Yeah, you absolutely can if you're worried about that person. So a lot of it is about education. So at Tough to Talk, we spend a lot of time trying to educate men in their men's groups, because we focus mostly on male dominated spaces, and we don't mean dominated as in a tyrannical fashion, but just lots of men in that space. And what do they know, what do they see, and what they hear about the men in their spaces? We know that men communicate best through banter a lot of the time, and we don't ever want to stop banter. Banter is great, but at what point is the banter not being reciprocated? What has something changed in someone's the way they're acting? So if to give you a really good example of this, my closest friends are also the partners of my partner's girlfriends, if you like, right? So they're the husbands and boyfriends of them. And I will go out and meet with them, and we'll have a couple of hours together. I will come home and my girlfriend will say to me, "How is how's Rob? Have you heard about his family member?" No, Rob never mentioned it. And Rob never mentioned it. And I now know about it. So if we look at what do I see, what do I hear, what do I know? Well, I didn't see anything. I didn't hear anything. But now I know about this. What do I do? Now I could leave it and just go, well, that's what blokes do. Or I could contact him and just say, "Hey, buddy, I've just heard about this family member. If you ever want to chat about it, just give me a shout. I think it's important. How are you doing?"
Yeah.
Right. Because otherwise, I went in there and I saw Rob and said, "How's it going?" And he went, "Yeah, yeah, it's fine." Like it's
typical.
not fine.
Yeah,
exactly. So we got to engage with the people around us. At Tough to Talk, we want men to believe that the most masculine thing you can do is take care of yourself, and then go out of your way to take care of others. So, but that means all of our environments have to change to reflect that. So that's where a lot of our training and our talks come from, to make sure that those environments are doing just that.
Steve, can I just mention then, because a really good point that you made then about, your mate not telling you about an issue in his life, but you found out via your missus, who then said, and that's a classic. I think we all have, friendship groups like that. I'll go out with my mates and my missus will say, how is everyone? Yeah, they're fine. And what did you do? What did you talk about? Football, took piss out of each other, etc. And one thing for me is, I think friends do say, "I'm here for you if you need to speak," or anything like that. And unfortunately, my friend lost his son about a month ago. It was a funeral a couple of weeks ago. He was only 18. And we've all been there for him, and we met, and he opened up to us, and but what I thought is, after the event, after the funeral, I sent him a message and said, "Look, hope you're okay." And I said to him, "Look, if you need anything, let me know. And I'm thinking, he's going to be a bloke. He's not going to want to bother me, because I'd be the same. If one of my mates said to me, if you need help, let me know, I'd just go, hey, cheers, pal. But I wouldn't let him know, because I'm a bloke. So how can I as a bloke go, yeah, I will let you know, and not feel like I'm burdening people? But also, how can I as a bloke say to my friend or anyone, I'm here for you. If you need anything, let me know. But actually let them know that I really mean it, and you should contact me. How do we break that cycle?
Well, I mean, there's two things about this. One, that's a truly awful thing to hear about, and sadly, I hear about this all the time. And I don't get too I still don't get too desensitized to it. It still really gets to me when I hear things like this. But you're absolutely right. So why is it that a crisis has happened and now we're offering help? So that's something to think about. Something's happened to him, it was really bad, and you all rallied around him, which was amazing. But imagine if it was just normal that when we spoke to our friends and we hadn't seen them for a little while, we asked them genuinely, how are they doing?
Yeah.
And why is it not okay to go, listen, if you ever need anything, seriously, you can catch me. And unfortunately, because of I hate the phrase toxic masculinity because it gets used incorrectly, but when men talk to each other through banter and they go, oh, listen, don't worry about it, mate, but if you need anything, please give me a shout. And the other guy goes, oh, gay, whatever, what you gonna do, hook it out with me, right? You go, that banter, that toxic masculinity is toxic right there. Okay, so what we need to do is, if that's the way you do banter, then brilliant. But find a moment to then say, listen, I know you were taking the piss, I know you're joking around, but I know you're there for me, and I'm there for you. We need to have that more masculine bond between men, like a band of brothers, if you like. To step above the banter and to do that, and it needs to be consistent. Not in the moments of crisis, but in real life. I know
keep checking in.
Yeah, absolutely, and we know that when we say you're all right, we don't mean are you all right. We're just saying hello.
Yes.
Right, but then at some point, ask that question for real.
I think, like, just from my experience, like going back to my friend, he lost his son in tragic circumstances. It was an accident, and there was nothing related to what we're discussing here. And like I say, you sort of rally round, and so it came as a shock to everyone. And sent him a message, after the event, after the funeral. And then, again, from my perspective, thinking, well, I don't want to become a pain in the ass to him and be like messaging him every day, because I'm sure he's got all his family messaging him, he's got all his colleagues messaging him, he's got other friends messaging him. And there's so many things go through your head as well, and it's not that I don't want to, it's just I'm thinking of him first, as daft as that sounds. I don't want to be a pain in the ass and add to his burden of another person to get back to on WhatsApp when I've got 55 people asking me. Do you know what I mean? Do you know what I mean by that? Do you know?
I know exactly what you're talking about, and really it's about consistency rather than frequency. So when something bad happens to someone, there's a huge impact, there's a huge influx, smash, loads of impact, right? But consistency will beat that every time. So if you're messaging him every few weeks just to check in on it because he's come to mind, and you go, listen, I've just been thinking about you, I just wanted to check in and make sure that you're okay, right? Now that you might be the only person doing that,
right? Yeah,
because after the event, weeks on now, everybody else is moving on with their lives. It might still be relevant for them, but if you've done that, and I do it now, if somebody pops into my head and I go, I wonder how they're doing, I've now got into the habit of messaging that person. While I think about it, just a quick one-liner. Hey, you just popped into my head, just want to check you're okay, and do you want to, and not call me if you need me.
Yes.
Do you want to chat? And often they'll come back and say, no, I'm all right, actually. And they start asking you if you're okay.
Good. What I've put before on messages is I've said blah 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 blah, hope you're all right, if you want to chat, I'm here. And then I just end it with full stop, and then seriously full stop, just to let them know that I'm not just tokenistically dropping him a message and I've done my bit now, off I pop, and it's I think it's a difficult conversation to have. And Why do you think we are where we are? Why do you think we are here with suicide at this moment in time? Why have we got to this?
Okay, so the world has got much smaller because of social media and technology, which is amazing because it means that we know much more about the world and can communicate better. The problem we've got is that the place has unfortunately become much more lonelier for men. So because the expectations of men to have a certain level, a certain masculinity, which is very poorly defined, and this is why we say the most masculine thing you can do is take care of yourself mentally, physically, and then help take care of those around you, right?
Yes.
But masculinity is often seen as toxic by default, and whether we like it or not, we still get treated as if we should act in a certain way. We should be strong and stoic. We solve problems. We do those things.
Yeah.
And even when we get told it's okay for you to cry at this, it's okay for you to talk about this, you don't that, we don't believe it because it's perception versus reality. Now, it all comes down to something called cognitive dissonance. So it doesn't matter what we know, okay, we'll still distance ourselves from it. It's like smoking. I always use the smoking analogy.
Yeah.
You might be a smoker and you're looking at a picture of black lung on a packet of cigarettes, and you'll smoke that cigarette because your need for that nicotine and that cigarette and that satisfaction, that gratification is greater than what you believe is likely to happen if you smoke it. Okay, the likelihood of me getting black lung. But all of a sudden, if you're a smoker and your best friend or your brother, your uncle, somebody you respect gets black lung through smoking, your chances of giving up suddenly go up because a leader in your life, somebody you respect or care about, it's happened to, and you go, well, actually, that could happen to me. So when it comes to men's health or men's issues, if you said to any man, if you're having a current life events issue or a past history trauma or something like that, what's the best way for you to deal with it? Chances are they will say, talk to somebody.
Yeah.
Then if you said to them, will you? If they were honest, they would probably say no.
Yeah.
But if all of a sudden they are surrounded by masculine men who can be open and talk about their shit, the things that they're going through, and then they have people they respect, leaders, not leaders because they are the CEO of the company, but the natural leaders in the hierarchy of work. You know, in a football team, for example, you know, it might not be the captain, it might be that stalwart, central defensive midfielder who's always been in the team for 10 years, who everybody goes to. If that person is leading the conversation by saying, we need to talk more, we need to engage more, and they're the leading shining light, then all the other men will start following suit because it will no longer be toxic. It will no longer be strong and stoic to stay silent.
This is where, so you referred to like groups like Andy's Man Club, didn't you, at the start? That is by definition then, from what you've said, that's what they do, don't they? Men go into these groups and see all these other men talking about it, which leads them to think, it's okay, and I don't feel like an idiot, I don't feel weak, I don't feel stupid, I don't feel that I shouldn't be here, you know. And it's that's where that comes from then, that what you've just described.
Absolutely. I go to a place called Bottled Up Blokes, and first time I sat there and they went around the room talking about their issues, and I was amazed how comfortable all these people found it. And I was watching another man who was there for the first time, same as me, and I watched him shifting in his seat. It was getting close. I watched it. It was getting closer to him. He was going to have to speak up, and he passed over. He said, "Oh, I don't want to talk this week, if that's okay." And they went, "Yeah, no problem at all." And then they carried on. Then afterwards, people were talking to him and so on. And he's been going every single week, and he's opening up and he's talking about it. Social circles are growing, and I can only imagine that these men are going back into their workplaces, into their spaces, and engaging with more men.
Yeah.
And if we can do that more and more, then you'll need us less and less.
Yeah. So, okay then. So let's say I'm not one of those men. I need Tough to Talk. How can you help?
You're unlikely to come to Tough to Talk.
Right.
Just off the, you'll need to be some kind of trigger. Okay. So Tough to Talk, we are, if you go to our website, we're very masculine. We've chosen colours. We stole colours off the old Mercedes F1 team because they were the most masculine colours. We're very direct. We're very be brief, be bright, be gone. We talk men's languages. There's a problem. Here's a solution. Let's fix it. But how do I get people to go to that website? Now, if you're part of that 80%, the chances are they're not going to come to us for help.
Right.
So what we're trying to do is we're trying to get into male-dominated spaces. So we're working with the FA. We're just about to launch our partnership with the Cheshire County FA. We're going to be their new partner. We're talking to large manufacturing companies, construction companies. And what we're doing is we're creating tough talkers in their spaces.
Right.
So we're training up men to understand suicide intervention. And what that means is that they understand how big the problem is. Then they understand the signs that no matter how subtle, that men might be giving off in their spaces. We're training them and giving them the confidence to be able to intervene in a suicide intervention and to put a person on a plan and get them to help, and then understand what they have to do for self-care.
Right.
And then on top of that, we train them on how to look at their organizations and go, you've got a really great message there of help to the organization, but the tone of voice is wrong. The messaging is not working because of this, and this. So they're actually changing their environments. So, and then eventually we'll all be just doing this. When we do that and we're all leading by example, it's men leading men, that part of those 80%ers will start looking. Well, what were they talking about with that Tough to Talk thing? What were they talking at Andy's Man Club, that bottled up blokes? Maybe I do need to give them a call, or at worst they'll speak to somebody at work properly. Because what we do know, this is a startling fact, is that most men who die by suicide have reached out for help to at least one person in the 6 weeks before they died.
Right. Is there any, this is probably information that you might not have, but I'll ask it anyway. When you said they've reached out for help, is there any sort of common theme of how they've reached out, what they've said? I'm now moving on to when you mentioned there about suicide intervention. So how could I, as a normal bloke, what signs can I look for? What can I do to maybe take on board some of the things you've said?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, the reason why it's often missed is not because we don't care. We say that they've reached out to one person, at least one person in 6 weeks, and we hear that it gets missed or dismissed. Now, that's not because we don't care, but it could be something as subtle as, I'm just not feeling it. I'm not coming out tonight. Now that might be they're just not up for it that night. But this guy goes out every week at that time. He never misses a time. And what do we do? Do we just go, okay, no, okay, fine, no worries, buddy. Are you all right? Yeah, you sure? Okay, no problem at all. And we carry on with our life, right? They might even say, well, do you know what? I'm just feeling really low at the moment. I just don't fancy it. And then if the response is, we often feel like that, mate, don't worry. Listen, a couple of pints will sort it right out. Okay. So it was dismissed, but it was dismissed in quite a masculine way. And that isn't because people don't care. It's just because people are just not aware. So it comes back to what we spoke about before. What do we hear? What do we see? What do we know? And so what I've seen is somebody who regularly goes out now tell me that he's not coming out tonight. It would just take a few minutes of my time to really get to the bottom of why they're not coming out, and nothing at all, right? But then there's lots of other things. I mean, there's some, we've seen men who are normally really miserable, and then for a week or two, the happiest people on the planet. And that should raise alarm bells. because all of a sudden they found a solution to their problem.
Yeah.
And they're choosing suicide as a permanent solution to a temporary problem. And they're really happy about it because they found a solution.
I feel like the burden's gone. I'm going to relieve myself of this burden, and everyone else, I'm going to do it in a week's time. I feel like my life's opened up, as paradoxically as that might sound.
Absolutely. And then there might be more obvious signs, they might be showing interest in dangerous activities that they weren't of before. It could be that they are unkept now. They don't care about how they're kept. They may be drinking more. It could be as simple as one phrase, which could be, well, this won't matter next week anyway.
Yeah. And just use those three terms. What do we know?
What do we see? What do we see? What do we hear? What do we know? And then the last,
Sorry, I was going to say, so use that example of someone that's maybe drinking a lot. What do we know? We know he's drinking a lot. We may have seen him drinking a lot. So there's two things there that we can think, right, this is someone that is doing something out of the norm for him. And it's a time that's maybe a trigger for us to then, drop him a line, get in touch with him. And is it, you're probably going to say yes to this, but is it okay to say, hi, Steve, I noticed you've been drinking more than normal, is everything okay?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because the last point is, once we see, hear, know, the last one is be brave.
Right.
Be brave. Be brave and speak to that person. Now, with regards to alcohol is a funny one. I just want to make this point about that is, you might have somebody who doesn't drink very much and all of a sudden starts drinking a lot. So you've noticed that, right? But also, I know somebody who is, for want of a better phrase, a functioning alcoholic.
Yeah.
And I have asked the question, well, why is that? Why is no one asking him? What is he masking? So still ask that question. Say, I've noticed that you drink so much. But you're right. The next thing is be brave. And you can be brave in two ways. If you are not in a position or feel comfortable enough to engage with that person directly, be brave enough to reach out to somebody who will.
Yes, right.
So in a work environment, that's easy. Go to HR, right? Go to their line manager.
Yeah.
Right? Because they have to do something about it. In a personal circumstance, it can be very difficult. But find somebody who knows them. Maybe partner up with somebody else and do it together. Don't corner someone though. There's nothing worse than that. But then, if you are going to speak to somebody directly, then make sure that you are safe, that you are not going to be putting yourself in a position of danger. Always look after yourself first. But then I always use the phrase, I'm going to make this name up. There is no Dave, by the way, but hey, Dave, I've noticed a real change in you recently. You're drinking a lot more. You're acting in this certain way. There's like more of a carefree attitude about you that I've not noticed, and I'm worried about you because when people act like this, they can be thinking about suicide. Are you thinking about suicide? Now, I use that way because I'm trained to do that. I'm an assessor tutor for suicide intervention. Now, you might not say it like that. You might get your words muddled up. You might say commit, you might say all kinds of things. What I say is just make sure you use the word suicide.
Yeah.
Because if you use other words, you'll give them an escape. So if you say, you're not thinking about doing something stupid, they'll go, no, because to them, it might not be stupid. It's the solution. Yeah. You might say, you're not going to hurt yourself, are you? No, I am not going to hurt myself. Yeah. Be specific. And the most common answer you get from somebody when you do approach them and you're the first person to ask is thank you.
Right.
Because they go, you're the first person to notice. I appreciate it. And I've been in a bad way. And so, so what do you see? What do you hear? What do you know? And then just be brave enough.
So that goes back, that direct question really goes back to how most blokes are, aren't they? Direct to the point, don't beat around the bush. I'm certainly like that, and I prefer people to be like that with me. I can't do it when people go around houses to get to a point that they could have got to in 3 seconds, and I'm very much direct like that as well. So I'd much prefer it personally if someone just asked the question, and like you said, they're metaphorically backed into a corner there, aren't they? And I don't mean that in a negative way, that they've then got to answer that very direct question using that very direct term of of suicide, which is a scary term, but it's a yes or no answer, isn't it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. You just got to, and then if they do say yes, then how are you going to get them help then? If you're not trained in this, then you need to kind of figure out how you can get them to get help. Are you willing to get some help for this? People who are trained will ask straight away, do you have a plan? And when are you going to implement it? And if they say, yes, I have a plan, that's a worry.
Yeah.
Okay, when are you going to implement it? And if they say in an hour, you go, well, that's good because I've got an hour to save your life. But what do you do at that point? Because at the moment you're now juggling their hot potato, and it's really uncomfortable. So those without training, it would be a simple case of if they have a plan, they're going to implement it, then get them to A&E. Just get them down to A&E, get them to speak to someone, phone a crisis line. Even if you are phoning the crisis line to say, listen, my friend has just said this.
Yeah.
Then do something, okay? And they will tell you what to do next. There's no point phoning the police unless they are in direct danger or in danger of hurting someone else.
Yeah.
So for an example of this would be, I don't want to give, if they were in the position to about to do it.
Yes. Yeah.
And then they're about to directly hurt themselves, or it could hurt other people. That's when you phone the police, because the police won't come out.
Right. So just to recap, as a non-trained individual like myself, the direct question, are you thinking about it, or are you going to do it? Are those terms okay?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Have you thought about it?
Are you no, not I've thought, just saying, are you thinking about suicide as an option?
Right.
Are you thinking about even if I couldn't care less if you weren't trained and you said, are you thinking about killing yourself?
Yeah.
Couldn't care less.
Yeah.
I want you to ask the question.
And if that person says yes, just recap there. What's my next step?
Okay, so now you've got a hot potato. So if they say yes, do you have a plan?
Yeah. Do you have a plan?
And when you're going to implement it? And then you've got time. You got time on your hands right then. It's very different whether you're coming across somebody who's about to do it. That's a 999 call. This is a 111 call, and we're going to try and get them to make the call. But whatever happens, you as an individual are the most important person. You need to be safe. So if you're don't put yourself in an environment in harm's way like this. If it gets too much for you, remove yourself and phone 111 to get advice from them. But most importantly, it's a myth that talking to somebody about suicide will make them do it.
Right.
It's an absolute myth. The chances of you saving their lives by talking about it is what's going to happen there.
Yeah. So it's the exact opposite then.
Yeah, absolutely. There's if you most people, and especially men, they'll go through weeks of planning.
Right.
So if they are 2 weeks away from doing it and you speak to them about it, they're not going to go, right, fine, I'm going to do it now. They've got a plan.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so it's unlikely to make them do that. There is there is a factor that we often see in cities when somebody in an industry dies by suicide, and then we often see somebody else from the same industry or circle or town or something, they die, and it kind of like gives them the permission. So weeks later they go, oh, they did it, so I can do it. But that's a different anomaly.
Right. So how personal question, Steve, tell me to bugger off. How did you get from where you were to where you are now?
Well, with
your journey.
Okay. So, well, from when I first, I don't know where to start with this. Well, when I first had trauma and then buried it, and how I am now, or from the last time I tried to die by suicide?
From the start, if that's okay, Steve.
Sure.
If not, then it's not a problem. Or from your first attempt.
Okay. Well, for I'll try and wrap this up quite quickly.
Yeah.
But so currently,
I just want to give people a sense that there'll be someone listening to this that has most likely had the same feelings, thoughts, processes that you have had, that I have had. That we're all human, so we all have similar thought processes, I think. And if you sharing where you were to where you are now helps one person, then we've done our job.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I'm your classic bloke, if you like. I've been very successful at everything that I've chosen to do. So I've chosen things I've wanted to do.
Yeah.
I've got means and opportunity, and I've just gone and done those things. But when I was 15, I had something traumatic that happened to me, and I never dealt with it.
Right.
Buried it, and I had to bury it because of the circumstances in my life. For me to say something would have just at the time, at that moment, would have been catastrophic for everybody around me. So I buried it. Then I joined the armed forces, and I was, and it was brilliant. I spent half of my career getting drunk in exotic places. I spent the other half of my career trying to blow stuff up, right, which was absolutely amazing. But because of what happened to me when I was 15, I kept it buried. I started to become depressed. Now, I didn't know I was getting depressed at this point. So I was suffering symptoms of depression, and no one spoke about depression. And I was doing quite a technical job. A lot of people relied on me. We relied on each other, but it was teamwork.
Steve, would you mind just highlighting what these symptoms of depression were? Because again, this could help someone think, oh, I'm feeling like that.
Yeah. So for me, it felt like I was carrying a rock in my stomach all the time. I was just sad. Everything had no point. And so for me, I didn't want to. I couldn't motivate myself to do anything unless I was being answerable to somebody. So being in the forces, my uniform had to be a certain way. I had to be a place at a certain time. I had to adhere to certain standards. But as soon as that was finished, I would just go into a hole. So in 1996, I was in Hong Kong for the handover, and everybody was going ashore, saying goodbye to Hong Kong. It was great. It was supposed to be a fantastic occasion. If I wasn't working, I was in my bed. I didn't go ashore once because I was so depressed, and I didn't know I was depressed at the time. I just couldn't do it. So we were on a training exercise in Wales, and we were doing something called surf drills, and we were capsizing the boat on purpose because we were learning how to put the boat up properly and then carry on. And I got trapped under the boat, but rather than being trapped inside the boat, I was trapped on the edge of the boat. And I started, and I knew that if I waited long enough, I would get flipped back up with the rest of the boat. They would notice, but then no one noticed, and the boat didn't flip up.
Yeah.
And rather than thinking, okay, time to panic now, I need to motivate myself, I need to get going, I just thought, I'll just breathe this in. Everyone will think it's a training exercise gone wrong. It'll be fine. This was clarity. Water's thrashing around all over me. But in my head, I just thought, in
a split second, that clarity came to you.
And I thought, this is perfect. This is my way out. And so I started to breathe in water. And I just thought, this is going to be brilliant. Next thing you know, the boat did flip. They then found me on the top. They took me ashore, and they wrote it up as a report, as a near miss. And they wrote it up as an accident. And they looked after me, and they made sure I was okay. That afternoon, I was back out on the water. And I was just pleased that no one had realised, because I was embarrassed and ashamed. And then a couple of things happened to me, in the Navy. A couple of things happened to me once I'd left. And these, again, never dealt with them. So that's when you can get complex PTSD, because it's a series of things that you never deal with, you bottle up. So of course I'm continuously depressed in cycles of, I seem okay, now I'm depressed, I seem okay, I'm now depressed. As I get older, I'm dealing with it less. A lot of people might associate with this, get anxiety, starting to get panic attacks, starting to think I'm having a heart attack, and I'm not. And bearing in mind that I train almost every day, why do I feel like I'm having a heart attack? And so I've got all of these things going on in my life now, and doctors are saying to me, well, you're having anxiety, you're having an anxiety attack. Are you stressed out? No, my life is great. And my life is great.
Yeah.
My life is great. I've got a great job. I've got a great family. I've got all these things in my life are great. I've got no excuse for this. So you just go, no, I'm fine.
You don't
And
need
I
an
am
excuse,
fine.
though, do you, Steve? You don't need an excuse.
No,
No.
but I must be having anxiety for some reason. I must have depression for some reason, but I haven't recognized it as depression yet. And then on the last attempt, which was 2 years ago, it was the first time that I spoke out. And then I started to get the help I needed, got the trauma counselling, got immediate counselling just to help me get through that moment, and then go on a waiting list. And if anybody's going through this at the moment, if anybody's in that dead man's land, you know, that bit where you've had trauma, you've had some initial counselling, and now you're waiting to get into some sort of CBT or any kind of other kinds of therapy, don't just wait for the stuff to happen to you. Get yourself to Bottled Up Blokes. Get yourself to Andy's Man Club. Get yourself on the phone to the NHS talk lines, Samaritans. You know, any of these groups. Get talking to them. If you want to know, you can go to our website, go to our support page. There'll be lists of people that you can call when you're feeling down. But don't just wait for that appointment. Don't just do nothing whilst waiting for that appointment. The most masculine thing you can do is take care of yourself and then take care of others. That's it.
So don't tread water while you're waiting for your appointment to come. Take action. No,
absolutely. And when you hear men talking, when you hear men say, "Oh my God, I can't believe I've been waiting 12 months for my appointment," okay, help them. Okay, cool. What can we do in the meantime? What do you need in the meantime? Okay, well, let's get that sorted. All right, support each other.
Brilliant, Steve. Steve, thank you. I could talk to you all day. It's been really amazing. Thanks so much, and so many nuggets in there for your average person, you know, whoever you are, wherever you're from, whatever gender you are, to take in there. And I think you just recap the 4 points that you made. The be brave was the last one. Just recap those for us, because they're really simple actions to take, aren't they? I think.
Yeah, so to always be aware of your group around you, right? What do you see? What do you hear? And what do you know about the people around you? Has something changed? And if it has, be brave enough to speak up.
And there's not, even if you say it wrong, it's better to say it wrong than not say it at all.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Because they might just be having a tough time. And that's still okay.
But it's still nice, if you are having a tough time, for someone to say, "Are you all right?" And if you say, "I'm having a tough time at the minute, mate, it's work, it's this, it's that, I'm dealing with it," they'll be grateful, won't they? I know I would be.
I used to work for a fabulous rugby club. Sorry, that's what I used to. I used to play for this fabulous rugby club, and their banter was horrendous.
Yeah.
You know, if you had something happen to you in your life, they would rip the crap out of you, and it could be the worst thing in the world, right? But you can guarantee, right, that 4, 5, 6 men will come to you one-on-one and put their arm around you and go, "Hey, you know that shit is bants, right?
Yeah.
Seriously, how are you doing?"
Yeah.
And
I think sorry.
You're gone. Yeah, and it won't stop in the club. It filters through that. And I think if we can take that to the rest of male culture, brilliant.
Yeah. I think when you said that things have changed, but things haven't changed, you know, as in people are saying that people are talking more about mental health, but it's the same people that are.
Yeah.
I think, like, I look back when I played football from being a kid right through to, I don't know, maybe 30 or something, and then I stopped because I didn't want to get injured and be going into meetings with broken legs and stuff. But I was obsessed. You know, I played Saturday, Sunday, and made some mates that I still see now, 20 years on. And, you know, we don't see each other for a couple of years. And then we meet up and it's like, no, it's changed. And I look back and I think, you know, the thing about, I think, team sport, certainly rugby, football, is the crack, the banter, and you know, how you sort of show your teammates that you like them is by ripping the piss out of them, you know, to a certain extent. And I look back and I think what maybe has changed, Steve, is that back when we played, we'd rip the piss out of each other for you know, some of the worst things, you know, but not in an awful way, in a loving way, as daft as that sounds. You know, it's your, you know, sometimes you'd think, have I done something wrong because no one's taking piss out of me? Have I, you know, have I is something wrong because no one said anything? But I think what maybe has changed now is that now maybe when people do engage in the banter or the crack, as we called it, afterwards people might say, look, you know, I'm only taking the piss, I'm here for you if you need me. Where I don't see that happened, you know, certainly when I played, you know, although we probably all knew it, it just wasn't spoke about. But I think that's what I miss about team sports, is the ripping the crap out of each other and, you know, having a laugh and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's how we show affection. It's how most men show affection. Between men is banter. But you have to have the conversations after those conversations.
Yes.
And, it has to, because I might go to that club and always know that banter is the main form of communication. But if I'm in a really low, awful place, I'm going to receive that banter very differently that day.
Yes.
And unless somebody comes and puts their arm around me later and says, you know, seriously, how are you doing? I may go away that night believing that no one gives a crap about me. Yeah. So it does require change. And I think it's we shouldn't end on this note, but just what you were saying before about the perception versus the reality. Yeah. The perception in the world is that more men are talking about mental health. The reality is suicides for men went up. The ONS data has just been released, and 60 more men died in the current stats. So we went from 2021 stats to 2022 stats. 60 more men died that year. So the perception is more men are talking. Well, actually, more men are dying. And you know, we're losing 12 men a day to suicide. So we need to do something.
Yeah. Excellent, Steve. Thank you. Just remind, where can we find you? Where can we find Tough to Talk? Any directors there, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So toughtotalk.com is our website. It's going through a bit of a change at the moment, but you'll find all the relevant information that you need to find there, all about all the support that you can get as an individual, and all the information that you'll need as an organization if you wanted to work with us, because we provide lots of training and talks. And of course, we're on all social media platforms as well. But we spend most of our time replying to things, trying to dispel a lot of nonsense that's out there. Should I say that like that? Maybe not. But yeah, we're looking to partner up with male-dominated spaces and help you communicate differently and you know, in the right way with men.
Brilliant. I think you know, the word for me is communicate. And what I'm taking from this is, it's better to say it wrong than not say it at all. And that's the thing I'll take away from this more than anything.
That's amazing. No, absolutely. Yeah. I'd rather you say something rather than nothing.
Brilliant, Steve. Steve, thanks so much. It's been amazing. Really, really appreciate it. Thanks again. Steve Whittle from Tough to Talk. Thank you.
No worries. Thank you, Danny. I appreciate the opportunity.